to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! ISB! 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Renew now, drives in low, throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle. Hey, welcome in for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This is not Jim Coyle. This is the friendly voice behind the glass, John, the producer, filling in as we get rolling here on a Thursday. Here from, I guess it's no longer the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. We haven't said that in a while. This is just the JTP Studios right now. Joining me as we get things started here is Mr. Shannon Griffith from the Believe. Is it the Believe Network that you're a part of?
Yeah, I cover IU football for the Believe Network, BLEAV.
That's right. I've seen that before, and I just wanted to make sure that I got that correct.
Yeah.
I know you also do Hoosier Tailgate and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. And
you and I were talking, I guess, to get things rolling. You were talking a little bit before we got started about all the Indiana football news that's kind of gone this week. They've been landing a couple of guys in the transfer portal to fill some gaps.
Yep.
What's kind of some of the big pickups that Kurt Cignetti's doing to trying to fill these holes for Hoosier football?
Well, when we talked about it last, and the spring game was kind of finalized and the spring was over, it was pretty obvious that they needed defensive help. Yep. And they had some scholarships hanging that they could, go get people that he thought that were going to be a benefit, not just a guy to occupy a space. So they got the D lineman kid out of Kent State, who was a highly recruited kid out of the portal by the name of CJ West. He was a big time defensive lineman for Kent State. I do think he's a bona fide come in and compete for playing time type of guy. And, Sig's one of those guys, you've got to have a body of work that he can evaluate before he's going to put any type of scholarship down for you. So that's what he's done with the defensive side of the football. They got the UMass transfer, the linebacker. I think it's in the G, Logan. Yes. He's an impressive kid. Now UMass hasn't been a stellar Division I program ever since it left the 1AA ranks and won a national championship, a few years back. But this kid is a bona fide player, I think, that is going to be able to come in and at least solidify some of the linebacking core. They also got the Pounds kid, another cornerback that was a JMU kid. Now, this kid was so coveted that they were up against like the Georgias, the Alabamas. They weren't just recruiting against, also rans. This kid was highly recruited from JMU, true freshman last year, phenomenal corner, can play man-to-man. He's a lockdown type of corner, good ball skills, everything that I've seen on him on film. I think he's legit, and he'll have 3 years. That's the key component, being that he's still got a 3-year eligibility role there. And then I think the last two kids, DJ Warnell was the kid that was out of Arizona. He's kind of the hybrid outside linebacker / strong safety type of kid, about 6'3", goes about 220 and can run. So again, they've really addressed I think some of the need areas on their defense that there were some potential holes at, being that it was the secondary was kind of a need area as well as the D line. And so I think they've added what they've needed to. Are they done? Yes, unless they got somebody that's a no-brainer for them.
Well, I do see, and you may have mentioned this, I'm not sure, but they also added Solomon Van Horst, a running back, fill the hole from David Holloman and Trent Howland kind of leaving.
Yeah, he he's kind of a all-purpose type of guy because he also returns kicks that he's pretty electrifying when he does that.
And that's something that Indiana's going to need to replace from losing Jalen Lucas as well. So that will be a good pickup for him.
Yep. He's that's where his threat is. And then he's also one of those guys they can put in the slot receiver position and utilize him in different ways there. He's not a big, tall kid. He's one of those true scat backs, the 5'8", 5'9", a solid 195, 200 pounds, but he's got some speed. And where he made his money per se was his ability to return kicks and good sure-handed kid back on the punt return team. And that is an important facet that IU, is going to have to find ways each and every week for them to be successful, especially next year. And I know this may be a little bit of coach speak to a degree. They have to win in the special teams arena, every phase of it, because that's where the hidden yardage lies. So you take a kid like Samuel Van Horst, and he can get a net 10-yard return or a net 20 to 25-yard kickoff return. You're talking about 1 to 3 less first downs an offense has to get, on any drive. Yeah. Or, the punting team and the kickoff coverage team to be able to pin an offensive opponent deep in the territory and force them to drive the entire length of the field and win what we call the field position battle. That is so important for Indiana, especially next year. But when you're not a juggernaut like Ohio State, Michigan, and those people, you got to find ways to win games in areas that maybe go a little bit unnoticed. And that's where the special teams aspect comes into. But I think they've added what they needed to and what we thought they would. It'll be interesting to see how they all stand out. I think there's now something like 34 transfers in this class that's coming in for Cignetti in his first year.
With a large JMU flavor. And I know a lot of people, there's give and take with that, because there's people who are on the side of, well, these guys have already been with each other, so they already understand how Kurt Cignetti's system works. They have a good rapport. They'll be able to help guys from the Indiana locker room adjust. But then you have people who are wondering, okay, these guys have played in the Sun Belt their entire career, and some in the FCS level. They have no idea what they're in for when it comes to the Big Ten, especially when you add the new guys like UCLA and USC and the guys from the Pac-12. So it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening, like how everything translates over for these guys specifically.
Yeah, that's the unknown. We know that they were the best of the best in the Sun Belt, the kids that are coming from JMU, because they were either a first team all conference, a player there, and they were a big part of the seasons that they've had at JMU. But the verdict's still out. I don't have any problem with the skill position guys playing in the Big Ten, because there are so many kids that are missed on that go to the JMUs of the world and light it up, and you'll find them, in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. It's the big guys up front. That's the one thing that can be a little bit of a concern with a JMU type of person, or in this case, the CJ West kid. But again, we're in a day and age that there are so many good football players all over the country, and you can't just take all of them. And that's why you see these kids come to the mid-major type of schools. They go there, they perform well, and the next thing they know, they're moving to the Big Ten, the SEC, or whatever, because the coaches know they missed on them, because they recruited them. They eventually recruited them at some point and said no, and then they go to a mid-level D1 school and light it up, and next thing you know, they're jumping in the portal, transferring. I mean, that's one of the bad things for the portal, for the kid, the Ball States of the world and the JMUs of the world. They go get these guys that the big boys miss, and they got a player, and next thing you know, the kid's hitting the portal because he knows he can go to Michigan and make big time money in NIL. And next thing you know, that mid-major just lost a big part of their success.
And that's one thing I feel like Kurt Cignetti, and this will obviously be a long-term process, but I feel like over the years, if he ends up being the coach long-term at Indiana, he's going to be somebody known for finding that hidden talent that the Ohio States and Michigans aren't always going to be paying attention to because they're going to be focused on the 5-star guys. So these first couple of years, I mean, really this first season to start will be very crucial to see if Cignetti, first of all, can get these initial pieces fitting together properly to set up what he wants to do for the future at Indiana. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that's going to recruit the high schools. I mean, he's still going to go recruit hard in the high schools, and his incoming class, John, is going to be right now is shaping up to be a pretty top tier class. It's one of the
top. Last time I saw him, one of I don't know which of the sites it was, but it was top 6 or 7 in the Big Ten with the new Big Ten, which includes. Right. Is it 18 schools now?
Yeah. The Big 18. I think we got to change it, but yeah, no question. So things are pointing in the right direction, you say.
I'm going to go over to the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Justin Beard comments, I'm pumped for the season, Shannon. Love that the LEO era is over. I want to see tough-nosed dogs at all times, and I'm sure Cignetti agrees.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question there, Justin, that I think everybody, when you have change, it's a natural reaction to have a sense of change, right? It's in the air, and you get excited about what's to come. Now, what I think has happened with Coach Cignetti is that he's backing up with some of the things that he's said publicly with what he's got coming in the stable. Whether or not that translates into wins, we'll have to see. But the schedule is in their favor. The schedule's in their favor with the number of home games they've got next year with 8, and the fact that the only time you travel west is to a UCLA program that is kind of starting over themselves after the situation they had this offseason. Yeah, and I don't think the UCLAs of the world are not like they used to be. I mean, you get the powerhouse in USC. They're always going to be a name program, just like Michigan is. But yeah, they've got a favorable schedule in the fact of those 8 home games and not having too many big time road trips that they'll have to take next year. So there is the era of opportunity in Bloomington, and it's good to see. Ultimately, the game's played between the white lines. These guys that are coming in, it don't matter until they start producing on the field and getting W's that you can sit back and say, okay, we've got something here. But optimistic, yes. Proof in the pudding, so to speak, to be determined.
I've got to say one thing I'm disappointed in. This is coming from a fan standpoint, obviously.
Absolutely.
And there's part of me that understands it, obviously, because you want to get wins, especially in this first year of the Cignetti era. But I really don't like the FCS game in college football for some reason. I almost wish that they would take the FCS opponent and replace the spring game with playing opponents of that caliber. Because when you look at Indiana's schedule, you have FIU, Western Illinois, then you have your first conference game at UCLA, and then Charlotte. 2 of those 3 non-conference games, FIU and Charlotte, are regular Power 5 or Group of 5 opponents, I should say. But Western Illinois is the replacement game for what initially was going to be the second of a 3-game series against Louisville. It was supposed to be, so last year they played in Indianapolis. This year they were supposed to play in Louisville with a trip to Bloomington for Louisville next season. For some reason, so you look at Western Illinois being game 2, right after you play FIU, you're taking a step down in competition from that FIU game. You go from playing somebody who is FBS Division I in Florida International. I believe they're in Conference USA still.
Yep.
And then you go to the FCS level. So you're going to have 2 weeks. Obviously, your first week, it doesn't really matter who you play, especially under a new system. You're going to be learning about your team. You want to play somebody of the caliber of an FIU. But you're going to go into week 2, and I feel like you're not going to learn anything new about your team necessarily from week 1 to week 2 before you travel to California to take on UCLA in week 3.
Yeah, that was kind of the impression after the Indiana State game a year ago. where the performance was at the top of the heap, but everybody was still in the mindset, well, that was Indiana State. Yeah, these games over the years, when you were trying to get to the magic number of 6, these were one of those ways of helping you get to that, tower, so to speak, is scheduling one of these type of opponents. There's been debate on this. There's been a lot of debate, and has been for a number of years, that that they were going to eliminate playing these type of games for the majors. There
was a time where the Big Ten, I don't remember what seasons this was in place, but they weren't allowed to schedule FCS.
Right. And the reason why this has all happened twofold. One was, like I said, it's against a Division I opponent, regardless of A or AA, or however you want to look at FCS, group of 5, however, is that, the chance to getting into a bowl game, get that 6th win, that could count. But then this was a way those programs like Western Illinois would fund their athletic department across all levels. And I'll give you an example. When I was coaching at Ball State, we started the year. I can't remember the years. Don't ask me to do that. I'm too old. We opened at Florida against Spurrier. And then the next week we went to Kansas. Kansas that year, I think, was a 1-2 ranked opponent.
That was the Coach Beatty. I can't remember the guy's name, but I know what area you're talking about.
Yeah, this was still back in those days. But anyway, the thing about it is that it funded our entire athletic department, because we made like $1.5 million for those 2 games. Football didn't see any of that money. That didn't go into our hopper, to our budget, to do whatever we wanted with it. That went into the general fund to fund all the other sports. And that's why these games get scheduled like a Western Illinois, is it helps them, because they'll get like $350,000 payday or $500,000 payday or whatever that is. It'll help them fund their budgets, and that's why they play them. That's the background of it. I agree with you. Don't play them. Do something that you can do otherwise. But it'll be interesting, Steve, because there's been talk about a scrimmage type of game prior to the start of the season, where you would play like one of these games and it would be more or less a scrimmage rather than an opponent.
I mean, think about it too, because the NFL has the preseason and people eat that up. I mean, you're maybe you're going to play more of your second string, but that's just a way for those guys to get reps. And so if you replace the FCS opponent, he can still play 12 games, just extend the season a little bit, start camp a little bit earlier, play a preseason game or 2 against FCS opponents, and you can still give those schools that money, because you'll televise these games, surely, especially in the age where everything gets televised for college football.
Yeah, there's no question that the television money aspect of things is always a benefit factor that almost, in some respects, doesn't need to play these games anymore because of what teams are making off the TV deal. But yeah, it's kind of one of those, is what it is. If you ask every coach, they want those games because it helps them get a W that makes everybody feel good. But does it really help them?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
Well, Shannon, what's coming up next before we get to our first break?
Well, yeah, for us, with me and Hoosier Football Tailgate, going to have Tyler Harris on here pretty soon from the Hoosier Connection to talk a little bit about NIL, but kind of the backstory and how it grew. And, all of a sudden he went from being a part of the athletic department to be thrown into this midst of the NIL and how that all came about. And hopefully that's going to be hitting tonight or sometime this weekend.
Well, Shannon, I appreciate you coming on with me. I know you weren't expecting to chat on the producer today. I know Jim just, it happens sometimes, but I appreciate you sitting in and talking a little Indiana football with me.
Absolutely, my friend. No problem at all.
All right. This is Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We'll be back with Bob Kravitz right after this. We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Did I remove you back yet?
All right. I'll check you later, brother.
See you, man. What's up, Bob?
Hey, man. Hey, I got to do a thing at like 9:25. So if we can keep it under 15 minutes, that would be splendid.
That's totally fine. As I was not even expecting to be doing this morning.
Yeah, is he having one of his days?
He just texted me. He might be awake. So I'll just let him know we got the show rolling. He can hop on whenever he's ready.
All right.
But here's what I was planning on doing with you, depending on whether or not Jim comes off. So I have just straight up honest, I didn't watch any of the Pacers game. I was going to ask you about the Pacers because I know people are contentious about it.
I'll talk to you about the Pacers. I'll carry you.
Okay. And I would love to ask you about this, but I know this is probably something that you don't want to get into. But I know you wrote about Greg Doyle.
Oh yeah, I'll talk about it. I don't mind at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I wrote it.
I'd love to ask you about it.
Sure.
I may even start with that if before Jim gets on.
That's fine. Give me some Diet Coke here.
And I don't want to bash him. I mean, you could do whatever you want because I don't really know.
I'm not going to bash him.
Yeah.
I think the 2 weeks and no fever is kind of harsh, honestly. So no, I won't bash him.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't know. I just didn't know what the situation was. I didn't know what they were going to do with him. It was just all of it was insane.
It was totally insane. It was Deflategate times 10.
Oh man. I tell you what, I appreciate y'all sticking around knowing this isn't Jim hosting the show today. I see we've got 90 plus people. That means I didn't make people turn off their YouTube show.
There you go. They love you.
Appreciate people giving me a shot today. Not that I haven't done this before. I just usually don't do it out of the blue.
That's a lot of pressure.
I usually resort to just not doing the show, but we had so many guests on today. I was like, you know what? I don't want to tell everybody.
Yeah.
We'll
if we can go till 9:25 or so, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll do the Greg Doyle thing. I'll ask you a little bit about Pacers, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, sounds good, man.
All right, here we go.
Steakhouse, Chop Shock, Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com joining us for this segment. How you doing today, Bob?
I'm good. What's Coyle got a tea time or what's the deal?
He might. I mean, hey, it is that time of year. He is a big golf fan. I know you're a golf fan as well.
Yeah.
And also PGA going on down here in Louisville, my neck of the woods. So I know he's been super excited about that as well. Coming up soon, whenever that is.
Yeah, I would find him.
Maybe you get some hazard pay today, right?
There you go. You're doing a fine job.
A couple things I want to get into with you, Bob, while we got you. First off, I want to ask you about the Greg Doyle piece. I know you wrote about him the other day, and obviously most people in the Indiana area and really probably nationally know what went down a couple of weeks ago whenever they had the Caitlin Clark press conference with the Fever, and he did the heart sign and essentially got clowned for everything that happened during that press conference and the way that he kind of carried himself. And then he had the article that he wrote afterward, or his column, kind of apologizing, but kind of not apologizing, depending on how you look at it, I guess. But you were able to find out some stuff about what happened in the aftermath, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, well, first of all, when your lead columnist, well, actually your only columnist, decides to disappear. Greg is very prolific. If you read him, he writes 5 times a week. So when he suddenly disappears in the middle of a playoff run with the Fever starting, and it happens just a week or two after this whole fiasco at the Caitlin Clark press conference, it's easy to put 2 and 2 together. And I just made some phone calls and sent out some texts and found out that he had, as I suspected, been suspended. I did not know initially that he also is not going to be allowed to cover the Fever live at the field house for the course of the entire year. Honestly, I thought it was a little bit harsh. I may be coming at it from the perspective of a columnist. You'd like to think that all your good work previous to that bad moment would give you enough of a reservoir of goodwill that they would say, all right, I didn't think it rose to the level of sexual harassment or misogyny or sexism or flirting or anything like that. I just thought it was a really unfortunate, dumb. It was cringy. It was cringy and creepy. And I felt bad for everybody involved. And I do feel bad for Greg because we've all done and said stupid things that we wish we could, put back in our mouths and wish it never came out. But, this is the price he's got to pay, and he's going to be paying a price for quite some time, I imagine.
Do you think maybe the suspension from covering any Fever games in person has anything to do with maybe the Indy Star was thinking, you know what, if he's there in person, there may be people who recognize where he's at and they're just kind of heckling him the entire time. Maybe it's more so, maybe not a protection, but just kind of trying to keep it out of the field house itself, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, Greg's a big boy. He can handle it. I mean, it's just like when I had the Deflategate story, they were questioning whether to send me to New England. I'm like, hell yeah, man. play some music. As long as nobody shoots me in the face, I should be okay. So no, I don't think that's it. I think this is purely, them being penal about it. And I don't understand that element of it. I can see the suspension, I guess, but as a journalistic entity, your job is to provide the best coverage of the teams that we care about. And look, you cover the Fever better when your columnist is there, and so I'm like, who you hurting? Seems to me you're hurting the readers. You're hurting the people who consume your content. So I don't know. I would need to talk at length with some of the Gannett mucky mucks to understand what exactly they're thinking there. But it seems like a lot. But hopefully it will maybe have a good impact in some way, shape, or form on Greg and everybody else involved.
Well, moving on from that, obviously you're covering the Pacers pretty extensively right now, and they're off to an 0-2 start in their series with the Knicks. They'll now return home to Indianapolis and face them this Friday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Do you think the Pacers still have a shot to kind of get their way back into this? Obviously, they're going to have their home games, and that's usually where you have the opportunity to see some momentum back. But what do you think the chances are right now of the Pacers being able to pull off what they did against Milwaukee?
Well, understand that the Knicks came into the series missing Julius Randle and Bojan Bogdanovic. They lost Mitchell Robinson, their backup big, for the entire series and probably for the whole playoffs. We don't know what's going on with OG Anunoby, who tweaked a hamstring last night and had to leave the game after scoring 28 points. And we don't know what's going on with Jalen Brunson with that foot. He a lot of times you're able to play because you got the adrenaline flowing and you can still play through the pain. But what happens this morning when he wakes up and the thing is blown up, if in fact that's what happens. So we don't know what kind of shape Brunson's going to be in for the games in Indianapolis. I have every confidence, I mean this, that they're going to win those 2 games and they're going to somehow win this series in 7 games. I know it looks bleak now, but I really feel like if they could just clean up a few things, get Siakam going, maybe get a lead and sustain it so that the game doesn't come down to a couple of calls at the end of the game. I think it's going to be a completely different situation here in Indianapolis, and I think they're going to win both games. I think they win both. I think they win game 3 by a lot.
One of the biggest complaints I've seen so far, at least for these first 2 games, is people saying that New York's getting rewarded for their physicality and the Pacers are getting punished for it. Is that kind of how you're seeing it?
Yeah, a little bit, but the more physical team usually gets the calls. And the Knicks, I mean, Josh Hart, Isaiah Hartenstein, these guys go to the boards hard. I mean, and here's the conundrum for the Pacers is that they want to get the rebound and run. But if you can't get the rebound, you can't run. So they've got to figure out a way to secure that rebound and get moving. And that's been a real problem for them. So I think if they tweak a couple of little things, I think they're going to be just fine. I don't imagine Siakam is going to continue to play as poorly. One of the big questions I had last night was where was TJ McConnell in the last 7 minutes? He did the best job of anybody on Jalen Brunson. He had, I think, 10 points, 12 assists, a couple of steals. I would have liked to have seen a backcourt of Halliburton and McConnell down the stretch. I think that might have made a big difference in the game.
One more question I'll ask you, and I'll let you go. I feel like, and this is a narrative you may want to avoid, but and this is sometimes some fan lunacy, I guess, but there was talk, especially in the first game, that if the game was close in the final stretch, that the refs were going to call it in favor of the Knicks because they're a bigger market and they want to see New York versus Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. How much do you believe that, if at all? And is that at all a factor into this kind of stuff when it comes to, they're thinking about TV ratings and I know they'll if the NBA had their way, they would want New York and Boston, but they're not going to go out of their way, I wouldn't think, to make it happen.
Well, I may be dumb, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist, generally speaking. Now, unless Tim Donaghy is doing the game, then that's a whole different deal. But look, at home, you're always going to get a friendlier whistle. I have every reason to suspect that the Pacers will get a friendlier whistle at Gamebridge. Rick Carlisle, I don't know if you had a chance to see it. I know you've been busy. Rick Carlisle went on about a 2.5-minute soliloquy in his press conference, tearing the officials a new one and saying, we're a small market. We should get a fair shot. And I think it's strategic. I think it's putting a bug in the ear of the officials. I think it's what Phil Jackson did for years and years and years. Him and Pat Riley, they go back and forth complaining about the officials. So anyway, there's my other phone call. So I gotta answer that.
That's fine. Well, Bob, I appreciate you. And, thanks for the insight as always. And we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Take care.
All right. Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. Appreciate him as always, especially here on a Thursday, hearing his insight on the Greg Doyle situation as well as the Pacers. And coming up next, we're going to have Tyler Smith here to talk a little bit of Indiana basketball. Langdon Hatton, I believe there's still some movement. We're waiting on the officialness of that, unless I've missed that by any chance today so far. But we'll get into that here in just a moment. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda and the Chop Shop, and we'll be back with more right after this. We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home.
All right, what's going on, Tyler?
How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just trying to do a show.
I was watching Bob, saw I had to pop off, so I wanted to get in just in case you needed.
Well, I appreciate. Honestly, I sat there and I was like, when I saw you pop in when you did, I'm like, I think Tyler must have been watching because normally people don't just hop in early like that. So I appreciate it. Surprised Jim hasn't popped on because he messaged me like 20 minutes ago. I don't know what he's doing though, but who knows? Appreciate all the compliments on the hotline, guys. I don't fish for comments, but I do appreciate them, especially since I didn't expect to be doing this morning. What are we gonna do here? Free think. We'll do that. And then I got to remember too, we got the heart out here at here. It looks like Jimbo's popping online. Hey, Jim.
Oh, all right.
We're in commercial. We're in commercial. Just
perfect.
FYI.
Perfect.
So just a heads up, we did start 20 minutes later. So this break right here, this segment is segment number 3. So this is the one where we have the heart out. So I'll probably pop in at a specific time. But we already have Bob and Shannon. Obviously, Tyler's here now, and then we'll have who is Chris Denari and Rick Bozich, and then we'll have an open segment to finish, unless you take Rick long. So,
which is a good
Sound
idea.
Good?
Oh, absolutely.
Cool. All right, my camera's going off, and you got about 1 minute till we're back.
What's up?
Not much. How are you?
Good. I've got to get you a microphone. Or didn't you say you ordered one?
For this or for the phone?
Well, you could use them for both. Same one for both.
All right, here we go, guys.
Any more Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMoreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Free Think Apparel. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyne, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Thursday, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thanks to John for filling in the first part of the show for me. And I am back. Tyler Smith with us from thehoosier.com. And I saw a post of Evan Mayakawa ranked Indiana with the top overall transfer portal activity, just in front of Louisville, ironically, and Kentucky number 5. Where'd Michigan? Michigan's number 4. So Dusty May and Michigan doing a good job. Kansas number 6, 7, Baylor. Those two teams are ones you're going to have to watch out for next year. Kansas and Baylor, they have reloaded and retooled. It is going to be interesting. I was having this conversation last night, Tyler, with somebody. It's still, I have no idea what the Big Ten is going to look like next year right now.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. There's obviously with the new teams included as well. Yeah, it's hard to say because, last year around this time and then early fall, you thought Michigan State was going to be a top 5 team, and obviously they had an okay year, but disappointing overall. I mean, I want to go back at some point and look the last several years at the preseason rankings and how they kind of matched up for the in season, how things ended up happening, and they're probably all over the place. But I think it'll be a competitive league. It always is. Indiana's got a great opportunity to be at least in the top top tier, top echelon of the Big Ten. And, they've done a lot of work on paper. Now they got to go put it on the court.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know what Indiana is going to look like for the most part, although they still have those 2 spots yet to fill. But that's going to be difficult because there aren't any playing minutes left, hardly, if any. You normally don't have 13 guys where all of them are expected to be able to play. And Indiana's already at that right now with the 11 that they have. They've all played substantial minutes either in Bloomington or elsewhere. So those final 2 spots are going to be difficult, I think, for Indiana to fill. I don't know that they fill both of them. I'm not in the school that thinks that you shouldn't, but is it 2 years in a row they went with an open scholarship?
Well, I know, this past year without that last scholarship filled, obviously, as you and I have talked about it changed dramatically when they had those 2 injuries. All of a sudden, that empty scholarship looks like a huge hole and missed opportunity. The way the roster is constructed this year, I don't think fans would be that up in arms if they leave an open roster spot, just because of the depth that it appears they have this time around. So ideally, they still fill those 2 spots. Maybe the big, the guy they've been looking at, or one of the 2 that they've been looking at, comes over, and then there's still a lot of names that are out there. So there could be a guy that they fill for more of a depth position. But if they do leave one open, it will not feel the same, I think, as last season when they left one open.
We will certainly look forward to that. Now, the trick for Indiana is going to be getting these guys, getting them to play together. You've got a lot of guys coming in from a lot of different places. But the fortunate thing is for Indiana, I think, is they're not freshmen. These guys have been through the rigors of college basketball. They understand that the level of which of what it's going to be played. So that should help. And quite frankly, I don't know that there's a lot of it's not the offense is not there's not a lot to it. I guess you could say for what Indiana has run over the last couple of years. So doesn't seem to be a lot to pick up there. It's defensively where they all have to make sure they're on the same page.
Yeah, and I think Rice and Carlisle's previous relationship will help. I think they'll hit the ground running together. You've got a bulk of the core that played most of the minutes last year back, so they can show them the ropes and hopefully lead. And this coaching staff's going to have some options. In one way, some fans may look at the roster and they say, well, they're kind of thin in the front court. But on the flip side of that, that's probably a good indication that they're comfortable doing what we all kind of want them to do anyway, which is to play Ballo and Renew, different times at the 5, and Baco at the 4 at different times, play some dynamic guards, in the backcourt. So ideally they do get, another big body, but more for depth, so if it's like, they end up kind of looking kind of thin in that department, it's probably a good indication that that's the route they're going to go. And that's a more modern style. That's a more dynamic looking offense. And I think especially the sense of urgency they're going to have this year, I think they're going to hit the ground running this time.
Well, and there's no question of all things, they almost have to get a backup big just because of a lot of the things you just said, but that they don't have one right now. And that is going to be an absolute must because we know we've seen Malik Renew staying out of foul trouble has been kind of an issue for him. Ballo is probably going to need the rest, getting up and down the floor, big man. So they virtually have to fill one of those spots with a big man without question, I would think.
Yep. That's probably, the top priority of what they're looking at still in the portal, still hundreds of names, believe it or not. So maybe somebody will even come about that's not been talked about as much. But I saw, Hatton with the one of the projections coming to Indiana. So we'll see if that happens here in the next few weeks.
Yep. It has worked to Indiana's advantage. There's been no doubt that they have been able to retool this roster. And some people are going to say, well, why weren't they doing this before? But doesn't matter. We're at the here and the now. But there's a possibility Indiana could end up going into the season as the favorite in the Big Ten. We'll have to wait and see none of that matters what you're projected as. If I were looking at it from a fan standpoint, I wouldn't want them to be picked as a favorite, because then you put a target on your back right off the bat. And that's probably not something a team that's just coming together needs. But the Big Ten is just going to be a big question mark this year.
Yeah, there's a good chance it's going to be that way here for a bit, especially again with the new teams and the interesting decision to not allow every team even in the conference tournament. You're only playing 3 teams twice, so it's going to be pretty wild. But I agree with you. Hopefully Indiana does not have. Oh, my dog's going off. Sorry about that. Hopefully my
mailman.
1 second.
It's all right. Mailman. Don't bite the mailman. But
I think now's a good time to figure out when he gets back. We got to figure out Tyler's dog's name. Every time we get the invasive dog barking from a guest, we always find out the dog's name. So now Tyler gets to join that club, I feel like.
Yeah, he's been pretty quiet. I've never heard. I didn't know that there was a dog there.
Maybe it's a new dog. It sounded like, if we're guessing the breed, it definitely sounds in the vein of like a Yorkie or a Chihuahua, if you're asking me.
No doubt.
Tyler, what kind of dog you got there, and what's his or her name?
That's a Schnauzer. His name's Gilmore, and
oh boy,
he goes off often.
Gilmore is a wonderful Schnauzer name, by the way. I'll go ahead and give you that.
What was that again?
John? Gilmore.
Oh, Gilmore is the perfect name for a Schnauzer, I feel like.
Oh man, those Schnauzers are protective, buddy. That is hilarious. Gilmore, that's funny. What a great name. Yeah. Gilmore's been pretty good. I never know what. There you go. Philip says Indiana Sports Bark Radio. That's funny. That's pretty quick, Philip. Got to give you that. That's pretty fast. Yeah, Happy Gilmore. Is he? I hope he's happy.
That was part of the thinking for the name, so it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, Mike says that dogs like to give me their opinion. That's right along the right line there, Mike. You're right on board. What were we talking about? The Big Ten and just a gigantic question mark. It's because there's so many new things. Number one, no Zach Edey, and Purdue with Zach Edey is going to be exposed, in my opinion, to be a regular basketball team. Their vaunted guards, I think, they're going to be in their 3rd year, and of course should improve as well. You've got Trey Kaufman-Renn, who his role picked up substantially last year and will do so again next year. But that's going to be interesting. I think they're going to be shown to be very, very mortal without that immovable object that is Mount Edey. So the Big Ten is wide open for any and everybody. And Michigan is going to be what's Dusty May. He's put together a good run, obviously. It was on that list I just mentioned a minute ago at number 4 of teams that have rankings in the overall transfer portal activity. So it's going to be an interesting year and a good opportunity for Indiana to be able to get back to the top of conference play. But you can't count out just because I don't know what Iowa's going to be like, Michigan State. So Ohio State, I've talked about them, that run that they made at the end of last season. So it's just going to be, I have no idea right now. And I don't know. And I've really not seen anybody make predictions on it.
Yeah, a little early for that. I mean, you got your way early type stuff that is tough to do, but I think Purdue's still going to be a good team. Obviously, the coaching, the history there. Agree with you. They're going to take a step back. It's going to be awfully difficult for them to get back to the level that they've been the last couple of years. I could see them being still a ranked team for sure, tournament team, possibly contending for a Big Ten title. I think they'll be really solid. But yeah, that was probably their opportunity to win the whole thing. Came awfully close. Yeah, I'm excited, for Indiana to have all these changes, for it to be kind of a transition year for the conference, and for them to have that opportunity is exciting for fans. It's exciting for the conference to see what happens and how it all shakes out. There's a lot of guys that have transferred places or that are freshmen that maybe don't even have that high of rankings because of where they were, but now they're going to get an opportunity and they're going to step their game up and come out of nowhere, and it's going to help those programs. So great opportunity lying ahead for the Hoosiers.
Absolutely. And the Boilermakers, it's going to be interesting. Will Berg will be the guy in the middle who takes the spot of Zach Edey, 7-footer. I think he's like 7'2". But that's not the same. I was talking with somebody about that yesterday. I'm like, man, it's not Zach Edey. Trust me. It was not his height. It was just everything. His overall size was just freakish. And I think you'll see that next season for Purdue. That's going to put a lot of pressure on their guards, I think, to step up and do even more than they have done. Trey Kaufman-Wren, who I mentioned, there's going to be a lot more pressure put on the entire team, and we'll see what they end up doing. And Tom Izzo, he always manages to bring something around. We'll see where he is next year. It's in the waning days of his career. Not sure how many years more he's going to coach, especially in this era of the transfer portal, in NIL. Michigan State has not been killed by the portal. It doesn't seem like they've lost very many guys, which that's always a great sign for your team when you don't have guys bolting to that level. I think that next year, Purdue with 6 incoming freshmen, it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep them all. And this has nothing to do with Purdue. It's just the way of today's game. Yeah, Philip pointing out the differences between Will Berg. He's 7'2", 255, and Edey was 7'4", 300. Trust me, that extra 45 pounds makes a difference. So we shall see. Appreciate you, man. We've got lots more coming up. What's up next at thehoosier.com?
Well, this weekend there's the Adidas Classic, so Indiana Elite back in action. A lot of intriguing prospects to watch this weekend, and then next weekend there's some more coming. A whole bunch of names of IU targets that'll be in the Indianapolis area. So we'll keep you updated those couple weeks on those players, exciting players for the future, potential targets. So it should be fun.
Absolutely. Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com joining us here at Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
We've got lots more coming up. Chris Denari, Rick Bozich, both still joining us in this hour. We'll be back with all of that and more right after this, brought to you by Free Think. Free Think promos, whether you need 20 t-shirts for this season's family reunion or the softball league, Free Think Apparel has got you covered. Reach out to Free Think, freethink.com. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right.
More coffee, please.
More coffee. What? Oh, Bob was great. I asked him about Greg Doyle because I know he wrote about him a couple of days ago. And then I got his thoughts on the first two games in the Pacers-Knicks series. Do what? Yep. And then Shannon was great as always, too. I mean, I don't doubt my ability to host a show. I just don't like it being without notice. But thankfully, I was awake and ready to roll this morning because there were some days where I'm not as peachy, I guess, as they say. By the way, we'll probably roll into this break into this segment a little early for Chris. He'll probably hop on after we come back just because of the nature of when we had to take a timeout, but he should hop on here momentarily, I think. I don't know what you said. Appreciate the compliments, Mark and Ross and everybody else who's said nice things. Again, I don't ask for it, but I do appreciate it. All right, here we go.
Use of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Ravesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Thursday. Has been winding down a rainy week. Of course, that's what spring is for. Some great thunderstorms rolling through last night. I hope everyone didn't get too bad. Although I know Evansville was getting the Ohio River Valley was getting pounded. Them storms just kept popping up. Hope everyone has been able to stay safe through all of this, because I know that there has been some funky, wonky weather, but that usually happens this time of year. The NBA playoffs, of course, rolling on right now as the Pacers 2 games up in New York. And the Pacers have filed a complaint to the NBA over 78 calls. That's amazing. The Indiana Pacers, this is from ESPN, have submitted 78 plays to the NBA that they felt were called incorrectly against them in games 1 and 2. That's just 2 games. A league source told ESPN. Pacers coach Rick Carlisle, speaking after Indiana fell behind 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals with a 130-121 loss to New York last night, said the team had identified 29 questionable calls from game 1. The source said the Pacers identified 49 such plays from game 2 and submitted them overnight to the NBA office. Carlisle said they had decided not to send the game 1 calls to the league for review, but reversed that decision after game 2 had similar officiating issues from their perspective. As part of NBA protocol, the clips will also be shared with the Knicks. I am not a conspiracy theorist, just not. I see lots of people who are talking about, oh, it's rigged. And I've said, though, TV and the NBA would rather have a team like the Knicks in the playoffs versus Boston. It's just going to draw better. But do I think that they are consciously, the league is telling the officials, hey, call it this badly, so that happens? I just don't believe that. And I don't believe that the officials get together and go rogue and make that decision. But obviously the Pacers are, I've never seen anything like that, where that level of calls and during a playoff to do something that's pretty drastic. That's a lot of calls. Now, there are always calls that are bad or wrong or missed, and it's usually kind of equal, but that's an unbelievable number. Tanis said that before the Revolutionary War, America existing was a conspiracy. 5 disagrees. He thinks that some refs are on the take. And it's not that it's impossible, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist. And there are so many people that are, and so many different walks of life. And some people may think that's naive. Maybe it is. We'll see what the NBA comes back and says. But Jalen Brunson, man, he came back last night into that second game, joined now by Chris Denari. Hey, Chris, I was just talking about the fact that, and welcome. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm a different location. I'm up at my son and daughter-in-law's house watching my 28-month-old grandson. So he's got helper cars on right now, if you hear it. So
what is Helper Cars?
Helper Cars is a wonderful animated show about cars. And my grandson Archer loves cars. So that is keeping him happy here for the minutes while I'm doing this. I've got a laundry list of appearances today. So Helper Cars is helping me out right now.
Well, that's awesome. Good for you. I was just talking about the fact that the Pacers have filed a complaint with the league, sending over 78 calls in to be reviewed. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I was just saying that I don't believe that there is this conspiracy where the NBA has gotten together with the refs and said, do this and do that. But that is an unbelievable amount, a high number. Yeah. And like in game 1, as soon as that, and even if the call is right, the moving screen, it was very, very subtle. Way less than the one that happened back in the women's national semifinals last year. And I'm like, how are you making that call at that time?
And Jim, it was way less subtle than the few minutes before when DiVincenzo set a screen and hooked Aaron Nesmith, and they didn't call anything. And that was right before the kick ball call that wasn't a kick ball that hurt the Pacers. So, I think part of this is gamesmanship. I mean, we all know at any level of sports, I don't care if it's high school, college, pro, whatever, there's always a home court advantage, right? I mean, we've watched so many games over the years. Hey, at Simon Scott Assembly Hall, Hoosiers have a home court advantage. You tend to get favorable calls. So this is Rick sending a message to say, hey, we need to make sure that if the home team is getting some calls at New York, we got to make sure the Pacers are going to get some calls at home. I thought Rick, after game 1 and the players, they set the officiating aside and said, hey, we still have to be better. We had a chance to win this game. Officiating wasn't the whole story last night. The Pacers definitely had an opportunity. They had a 12-point lead early second half, couldn't close again for the second straight game. But this is all about setting the table for Game 3. I still think, Jim, people may call me a homer. I still think the Pacers can win this series. I really do. I thought they went in and competed very hard at Madison Square Garden in a tough environment, had optimal chances to win the game, didn't get it done. Clearly, the Knicks out-rebounded the Pacers, especially in the fourth quarter. But I think they can go home and use the crowd and use the adrenaline and win games 3 and 4, and then you put the pressure back on the Knicks in Game 5. So, we'll wait and see. But I think for the Pacers, the longer the series goes, it's an advantage because we don't know if OG Anunoby is going to be ready for Game 3, let alone the rest of the series. We don't know the issue with Jalen Brunson's foot. So it's just going to be an interesting and fascinating time here in the next 48 hours to see what the table looks like for Game 3.
Yeah, last night we had a little Willis Reed action with Jalen Brunson coming back in that second half to really put some damage on the Pacers. But I agree with you. Getting back to home, they can equally equalize this series without question. And the fact that those games have been played so tightly on the road suggests that there's no reason to think that they can't win when it goes back on the road. You win the home games and keep it even.
Yeah, I think what's been remarkable about this series, and it was really this way in the 76ers Knicks series, Jim, are the runs that each team goes on. I mean, the Pacers were down 11 early in the first quarter and scored 11 straight points in less than a minute and tied the game, and then ultimately took the lead going into halftime and had that 12-point lead. And all of a sudden that evaporated on a 14-0 New York run. So you've got to manage those runs. I really thought when the Pacers took that 12-point lead in the fourth quarter, I thought they were in good shape. It turned out not to be the case. I think the one thing that Indiana has done negatively is at times they have overhelped off of Jalen Brunson. I'd much rather see Brunson get a 2 than the kick out to DiVincenzo for a 3. I think that's been one of the problems for the Pacers. They've got caught over helping on Jalen Brunson, doubling, and they've paid the price.
Yeah, and now we come back to Indianapolis for this series, and I'm quite certain that the Gamebridge Fieldhouse crowd is going to be even more fired up than they normally would be because they've watched these games, and they take that personally, just like the players do.
Oh, no question. I mean, it's going to be a great atmosphere. I mean, the Pacers won all 3 games at home in the Milwaukee series. They won their last 5 regular season games. So, Jim, the Pacers have won 8 straight at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. I think that's the longest home court win streak for the Pacers since back in 2012 or 2013. So Gamebridge has been a great place for the Pacers. They dominated the Bucks there in 2 of the 3 games, won the 1 game in overtime. But I really feel like Game 3 can be a momentum boost for the Pacers. You look back at what you did in New York, and I know you didn't win the games, and people say you're still down 2-0. But I think for the most part, you handled the pressure pretty good until it got to the fourth quarter. And I just believe being at home, having that Pacers fan base behind them will benefit Indiana.
So there's a comment. Derek says he doesn't watch the NBA enough to know, but he was confused on why the double dribble was called inadvertent. I remember that, and I'm like, how are they able to overturn every single little call? Is everything reviewable?
No, well, they didn't even review it, Jim. They just said it was an inadvertent whistle, and this is what drew the ire of Rick Carlisle. Go back to Game 1 when they ruled it was a kick ball, and you can't review that, and it was not a kick ball. It was off his hand. And I think Rick Carlisle is saying, if you, the officials, can say that you missed that call on the floor, how could you not in Game 1 not adjust that call? That's what he was upset about. That's why he was angry, is that we watched the replay. Hartenstein did not double dribble. However, the officials overturned the call without replay, and they did not do that in Game 1. That's why he was upset.
I understand completely as well.
And I agree with Brian. It wasn't inadvertent. The referee did make the double dribble sign, but what they said after the fact was it was an inadvertent whistle. So that's the issue that the Pacers had, why they were so upset with game 2. I don't think the officiating hurt the Pacers as much as game 1 did, but they're going to use that to tell the story of what's happened in the first 2 games.
Yeah, is there any chance that there is a change in officials? Has that ever happened during a series?
Well, I mean, it was a different set of officials in game 1 to game 2. It's really different, every game and every round, but officials are written up. I mean, your ability to advance from one round to the next, it's a grade card, just like the NCAA tournament. Those officials that have good first and second rounds advance to the regionals, and then those who have good regionals in Elite 8, they advance to the Final Four. That's the same way in the NBA. So if you've got some black marks against you in the second round, you're probably not going to advance to the third round.
Yeah, I would be highly surprised if we see some of these officials moving forward, obviously, especially after the unprecedented move of the Pacers to send in that amount of calls. I mean, that's unbelievable. 78 calls over 2 games. Yeah. 2 games. It's crazy. And it's not whining over spilled milk either. This is, like we just talked about, some of this is ridiculous. How an official at that level can do some of the things that they do. I'm like, NFL officials, they have so much to remember. There are so many, I think more rules maybe, but it seems to me that I'm surprised a lot by the things they're able to recall to do. Well, you can't do that and this, that. NBA basketball is pretty much basketball, and they're really, sometimes you really get confounded. I'm like, what?
Hey, this is the great thing about the laptop. I'm moving just to check on one Archer Denari, who has come upstairs and he's gotten his Tonka trucks out. So I'm going to sit here. This is I know this is great radio for those that are listening on radio or watching here. There
Archer!
He is. There's Archer.
I hope, hey, he's smiling. He knows what's going on. He says, hey, I'm on air, baby. Archer, how are you, buddy?
You doing all right, Archer?
Now he gets shy.
Debut.
Well, we'll have to. If next time you can't make it, we'll have to have Archer on in place. I think he likes it.
I do too. He's got a future.
He's a natural.
He's got to take the pacifier out of his mouth, though.
Replace the pacifier with a microphone, maybe.
He has a second one waiting, and then he has this little puppy with him too.
He's all set up. Well, maybe he can officiate NBA games. Because I don't think that. Yes, I don't know what he said.
He's saying white car. He's looking out the window. He loves cars.
Oh,
so he's a gearhead. Gearhead. That's right.
I did hear that. That's funny. Do you know how to say officiating?
Can you say officiating? Can you say Pacers?
Go Pacers. He's getting shy on us, but yeah, the series returns to Indianapolis, and like I said, I know that Gamebridge is going to be on fire when the Pacers return.
Yeah, the other story that came out of it, Jim, it was good to see the bounce back from Tyrese Halliburton. And I know that, he didn't have maybe the fourth quarter that he wanted last night, but 34 points, 7 threes. If he doesn't do what he's doing 1 through 3, then the Pacers don't have a chance to win that game. So, I was glad to see him bounce back. I thought tough nights for Siakam, tough night for Miles Turner. Bench was good again with McConnell and Toppin. But again, I feel good. I mean, we know how many series go 6 or 7 games, and what the Knicks did is what they had to do. They did. They won. They had to have home court advantage and win their first 2 games. And now it's up to the Pacers to go home and win their 2 games.
Absolutely. And looking forward to that. How tough is it going to be for the Pacers to come back? You're down 0-2. You feel like you've got screwed. So there's no doubt. I know even the professionals, that's in the back of your mind because you do feel like that. And I'm wondering what the mindset for them is going to be like.
Now he is saying Pacers. So I think they'll be fine, Jim. I mean, I think this team has learned a lot the last 2 years, going from 25 wins to 35 wins to 47 and getting to the Eastern Conference semifinals. So I think they'll handle it quite well. They have enough veterans on this team that can help with the younger players. But again, I expect them to win game 3. Now, people will say, hey, you expected them to win game 2. But they've had every opportunity to win the first 2 games. I think they win the next 2 and go back to New York 2-2.
We'll certainly find out. Appreciate it and looking forward to it. The great Chris Denari, as well as Archer Denari here on Indiana
Archer
Sports
making his
Beat Radio.
debut. Hey, thanks. And we'll talk to you next week. And hopefully this series is still alive.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Chris Denari and Archer Denari joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Brought to you by Boost Fundraising. If you know anybody that needs a fundraiser, Boost Fundraising raises more money faster and offers the most unique and user-friendly online fundraiser in the nation. Your team receives personalized fundraising pages for each team member. Free team-branded promo gifts shipped to each donor. Boost Fundraising does it all, whether it's sports teams, marching bands, charity causes, or community groups. Go to boostfundraising.com and be sure to enter the promo code COYLE to receive a discounted fundraiser. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, including Rick Bozich after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate
how do you
you
like
as
the
always.
beard? How do you like the beard? White?
I noticed. Hey, that's the same thing as mine. It's like now, unfortunately, it did not used to be that color.
No, same with me. I haven't shaved since the last telecast last Thursday. So
I almost mentioned that. I go, look at you, you're getting all relaxed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Archer, have you shaved?
Have you shaved? He and I are having fun today.
I bet. It sounds like it's a blast.
Yep. All right.
You guys have fun, man. Enjoy it.
Okay. See you, Jim. See you, John.
Thank you, Chris.
You.
All right. Bye.
Hello, Rick.
Yeah.
Or Rick's living room, I should say, wherever he's joining us from.
I'm getting ready to clean my screen.
Oh, there you go.
What's up, fellas?
How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Wow, look at that. I can see
Look at it, all shiny and
now.
sparkly.
The rain has come.
What Kravitz have to say? You talk about Doyle?
I asked, so I was actually filling in for Jimbo at that point. I asked him about Doyle, and he was actually very, I don't want to say supportive. He felt like the Indy Star was a little harsh about Doyle.
I find that a little surprising.
I was surprised as well. He didn't say that he didn't, deserve some sort of punishment, but he believed the whole Indy, like not being able to go to any Fever game was a little much.
Yeah.
Well, it's just in this day and age, you have to make the appearance of things that you don't, whether you agree with it or not, I believe. But now,
does Doyle ever come on with you?
He did one time a couple.
I asked him
ago.
come on one time, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that'll be the.
It
end
was.
of that.
I don't even remember what we talked about, but it was super weird segment.
Yeah, well, imagine why. They could guess why.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was. But he is part of a trivia question that only me and you will get. What does a guy named Doyle and a guy named George have in common? Can't go to Cambridge Field. Can't go to Cambridge Field House.
All right, here we go. 10 seconds.
For 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Thursday. Thank you so much for being with us. Brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville down in Southern Indiana for all of our Southern Indiana peeps, located right off of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Great atmosphere, over 50 big screen TVs, food made fresh every day, everything from their signature ribeye, seasoned salmon, garlic knots, large salads, and so much more. Make sure you stop in and say hi. Pizza, burgers, beer, Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Welcome, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. And Rick, it is the month of May is going to be is always busy, but this one may top it off, because we started with the Kentucky Derby already. That was in the books, thank goodness. Coming up this weekend, there is more AAU action up in Indianapolis to cover. The PGA in Louisville and Valhalla follows that. The AAU just goes on all month, to be honest with you. And when we finish with the Indianapolis 500, so now you want to talk about 3 unbelievably major sporting events happening within a span of 4 weeks. And I don't know has something like that ever happened. Those are 3 major big time sporting events within 100 miles of each other, and they're gonna within 3-4 weeks, like I said.
Wow. Not here, not that I can remember. Not here for sure. Because the PGA's only been here. This will be the 4th time. Derby obviously is here every year, but yeah, it's been a great time. It was a great Derby. Highest TV ratings in 35 years. Unforgettable finish.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And, it was a good Derby week. Good cast of characters to write about and watch. And we still don't know whether the Derby winner's going to run in the Preakness, so the story is ongoing.
Yeah, I think it was your tweet that pointed out that I think it's Kenny McPeak has skipped the Derby with 7 winners. Is that right? Or not winners?
Yeah,
but
he skipped the Preakness with 7 of his. He's running the Derby 9 times, and only 2 of those horses went on to run in the Preakness. So if he does it again, it's not like it's the first time. He's done it consistently with his horses, and he feels he's a Kentucky guy. He grew up in the Lexington area, went to UK, lives in Louisville. Got a farm over by Lexington. He understands the tradition of horse racing, and I think he feels the pressure of the Derby winner running in the Preakness, but he also knows that the last time he ran this horse on only 2 weeks between races, the horse ended up with a lung infection, and he doesn't want to do anything to damage the long-term racing career of Mystic Dan.
And the one thing now, those other races, though, was never with the Derby winner, right?
Correct. He had his first Derby was in 95. He had Tejano run. He finished 2nd, and he came back. I think he finished 7th in the Preakness. And then the best horse prior to Mystic Dan that he ran in the Derby was Harlan's Holiday, who might have been the 2nd or 3rd pick that year, and I think he ended up 7th. So no, he's never had a Derby winner before.
The one thing I have never understood, with all the talk of resting horses, well, it's a different day and age than it was, say, 30 years ago. Hell, they would run. How many races did Secretariat run up? It just seems like they were running every week.
I'd have to look it up, but he probably had
5 or 6 races as a 3-year-old. I mean, if you go back a little bit before that, a generation before that, they'd run 10 times before they came to the Derby, or might run 3 times in April before they ran in the Derby.
Yeah, good mention there, catch there, Bill. We also have the NBA semis in Indianapolis right now to add to that list of great sporting events.
And the start of the Indianapolis Fever season.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, they're going to charter planes soon, baby. Our buddy Bob asked about losing their frequent flyer miles.
Wow,
go moving to charters. The thing I've never understood about thoroughbred racing, and I know it's because it was the history and tradition which was set a long time ago, but the fact that these unbelievable 3 races are so close. The Preakness is 2 weeks after the Derby, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I remember it being when I was a kid. I didn't follow horse racing that closely then, but I remember it was 2 weeks and then 3 weeks. Didn't really start to be much pushback against that, I think, until the 80s. I think it was pretty much accepted until then, and then you got a different breed of trainer, and the value of these horses got to be so astronomical in the breeding ring that people like, do I really want to risk the value of this horse by bringing him back so quickly? And now there's a pretty strong sentiment, I think. I mean, Dwayne Lucas for 15 or 20 years has been pushing that it'd be better for the horses and it'd be better for horse racing if you set it up where you ran the Derby the first Saturday in May, you put the Preakness around Memorial Day in Baltimore, make it a holiday type atmosphere. You could get a big crowd, and then you have the Belmont 4th of July weekend in New York, and that would be better for the horses. And you could schedule 2 of the races around holidays and maybe drive up the interest and build up the storylines. And then the problem is so many people that are in charge of horse racing have been in the game their whole life, and it's a family background. They've always had money. They've always had horses, and they don't want to change tradition. So,
yeah. Well, I think that they're hurting it by not changing, because the times have changed. The how the sport is looked at has changed. The training has changed, and all things change. And by not doing this, you run the very risk of not having the premier horse in the race. And if you have a Preakness without the Derby winner, it's almost, who cares? Who cares about the Preakness if the Derby winner is not in it? It's because you've automatically taken the possibility of a Triple Crown winner off the table, and that's half of what people care about, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and Baltimore's always the one that suffers. The Derby's always going to have the biggest crowd, the most buzz, the most interest. Belmont will probably be second because it's in New York, and if you have a Triple Crown on the line, it's a big, big deal. I've been to a number of those. Unfortunately, I didn't see American Pharoah and Justify win, but I've been to a bunch of them where Silver Charm, Sunday Silence, Silver Charm, Real Quiet, Funny Side, Smarty Jones were all trying to get the Triple Crown. That place was packed and electric. But the Preakness, as you mentioned, is sort of definitely third in the pecking order. And if you have a year like this year, and if Mystic Dan doesn't go, there might only be one horse in the entire field just steal Dwayne Lucas's horse, who wasn't anywhere close to the money at Churchill, running in the Preakness. It's just like another race.
Chris pointing out he just got back from looking at the Newmarket Racecourse and lunch in town, and I'm going to assume that the Newmarket Racecourse is somewhere over in jolly old England, because I think that's where Chris. Listen, have you been to that course?
I have not. No, I haven't been to any races overseas.
It would be hard to keep up with because they run backwards. What is it? Oh man, can you take a horse that is used to running in America and run in England? What would that be like?
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I mean, just have to do a little training because they come from over there and run in the Derby. it goes both ways. And you've got horses that come from Europe every year and run the Breeders' Cup. And you've got horses from here that go over there and run occasionally. So, yeah, it's a little bit of training will change things.
We've talked about all these major events coming up, so let's get to that. Then the Indy 500, you want to talk about some drama leading up to that race with Penske suspending a total of four of their head honchos, but after Joseph Newgarden had a win DQ'd, the head guy there, Cindric, which is Austin Cindric's dad, who is a NASCAR popular NASCAR driver. That's going to affect the Indy 500, I think. I would imagine, but it's kind of weird to think the guy that owns the track, that owns the series, he's getting pounded for cheating. Not him personally, but they were in essence, they were cheating.
His team?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's not good. You don't need that. I don't know enough about the intricacies of horse racing to know how much that is suspected of going on, and it's not policed well, or whether people tell on each other. So, I mean, how does that go down?
The cheating, in IndyCar, they have this. In the IndyCar, not like NASCAR, they have this ability to a button that gives them a boost, a speed boost that is, I don't know what it's for. It may be for passing, but you're not supposed to use it during restarts. And they, for whatever reason, were able to use it during restarts and were using it. And got suspended.
And how did people find out they were doing that? How did they get caught?
That's a great question. I don't know. I guess I need to dig in a little deeper. I don't know how they got caught at that, but like I always say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
It's the same thing as in horse racing. I mean, in horse racing, there's always the questions and suspicions about which trainers are using which drugs and whether their ability to medicate their horses is superior to the drug testing mechanism, so they can beat the tests. And when all of a sudden a horse who really hasn't done much shows up and wins a race they weren't supposed to win, sometimes there's a lot of, wow, isn't that a great story? But behind the scenes, there's like, well, I wonder whether that horse was juiced. So yeah, it goes on in all kind of competition.
Yeah, there will never be a race that stands out to me more than Big Brown winning the Kentucky Derby, and that horse was just different. But I digress. Valhalla comes up before Indy, and that major event. Louisville is very fortunate that the PGA purchased Valhalla, because it has brought. This is the fourth PGA, like you mentioned. They've had the Ryder Cup there, the Senior Open there. It's a very, very fortunate course, and they've had some big time winners with Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, having won this event there, and Tiger will be in the field. Rory will be in the field, but Tiger is probably not up to par right now. I would not to.
He was actually in town yesterday playing the course, which sent a message that he's serious about trying to compete, certainly at least make the cut. He didn't do great in the Masters. He started that okay, and then struggled the last 2 days. But he was here yesterday to play a practice round. You got Justin Thomas, the Louisvillian, who has won 2 PGAs but hasn't had a great year in the tour. He played a practice round here on Monday, so they'll all be showing up here Sunday night and Monday. And next week will be a happening week in Louisville. Unfortunately, to what you mentioned, this might be the last PGA in Valhalla for a while, because the PGA actually sold the course. Last year or the year before, to a group of local golfers led by Junior Bridgman and a couple of other local businessmen. So I'm not sure we'll get another PGA, unfortunately. And as you mentioned, it's got a great tradition. The first year there was in 96, Mark Brooks beat Kenny Perry in a playoff. And then 2000 was the unforgettable one when Bob May, a guy who I'm writing about today, a nobody, almost had Tiger beaten, lost in that dramatic 3-hole playoff. and then they came back the third time, and Rory McIlroy won. So it's always good for a course when one of the really top players wins. So hopefully that'll happen again this year, whether it be Scheffler or Rory again, or whoever else, Jordan Spieth, whoever else you consider one of the top, John Rahm, one of the top golfers around.
Why did the PGA sell Valhalla?
I'm not sure. I think they moved their operations somewhere else, and a group of local guys who have been Valhalla members for a long time were interested in owning it and changing some things about the course. So yeah, that happened like 2 years ago, I believe.
I was not aware of that.
Yep.
I know there are people that live in the Louisville area that work for the PGA. Actually, I have a friend also that I think he lives in Dallas. Where is the PGA actually headquartered?
It used to be in the Jacksonville, Florida area, but I'm not sure. I'm not enough of a golfie to know that, but I do know that they sold the course, and it's hard for me to imagine we'll get as many majors here as we've had since 1996, plus the Ryder Cup. So that's a change, but yeah, as we just mentioned earlier, the beat goes on.
Yeah, I would love to know that selling price of Valhalla. I'm sure that was more than a 5-figure deal.
Oh, for sure. It was created here. I mean, I was in the 80s when the Game family of Jeffersonville had a dream, and they had a connection because one of the sons went to Purdue, and he was friends with Bob Greasy, and Bob Greasy was friends with Jack Nicklaus, where they were able to get Jack Nicklaus to come up here and see the land and agree to be the golf course architect, and they built the course, and it was a big hit. And now it's one of the premier, private courses, certainly in this part of the country.
Absolutely, and it's a shame that they've sold it because of all the events that has been brought to Louisville because of that. But this area,
Right.
There has not been since Crooked Stick. I'm trying to think. Has there been a major PGA event in the state of Indiana?
I don't think so.
Me either. I'm surprised they haven't gone back to maybe the Pete Dye course. That's an unbelievably beautiful course, but I'm not sure that is built for fans. Unfortunately, it's just
Right.
it's almost too hilly, but it's an absolutely beautiful course. What is up next for you, sir?
This weekend, probably not a whole bunch. Getting ready for PGA. Got to finish the story on Bob May. Whatever happened to Bob May after a second being the runner-up, losing that playoff to Tiger Woods.
It killed him, baby. It just took him down.
Oh, that was the highlight. He handled it great. I mean, he's one of the most. Can't think of many people that are as applauded or admired for finishing second as Bob May. He did a great job that day. Nobody expected him to be there, and he stood in there and went toe to toe with Tiger. And that birdie putt Tiger made on 16 when he chased the ball in the hole and pointed his finger at it. That was the shot of the playoff that won it for him. So follow a little bit more portal stuff. I know that Louisville's got a few more guys to get out of the portal. I wrote early in the week about how maybe things are getting back to normal with IU, U of L, and UK all having top 5 portal classes. So we'll see.
Yeah, I said that to someone the other day that it should be a fun year with Indiana, Louisville, and Kentucky all being back to relevance, I guess you would say, at the same time. And perfect timing, because a year from now, we're going to be talking about the return of the Indiana and Kentucky series, and looking greatly, looking so forward to that. That is a series that should have never ended. And I had Christian Watford on a week or so ago. Indiana is going to have their first TBT team this season.
Watford going to play?
No, he's kind of GMing it.
Okay.
Right now, I think we've only seen unless there's been additions that I have missed, but Juwan Morgan, Troy Williams, Miller Kopp.
Kopp.
I haven't seen anything additional yet, but I know that they're working on that. But just the fact
Jordan
that they're
Hall,
having
so?
it, you know what? He could easily play because he's only 2 years removed from being at the top of his pro game. He left and was killing it over in Europe.
I would imagine Robert Johnson be a possibility, maybe, or Josh Newkirk, James Blackman Jr., maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, all of those. It's going to be interesting and fun to watch. So I'm looking forward to that, especially because it's in one of the most historic venues of basketball, but in Indiana at least, at Hinkle Fieldhouse. You're going to have a team from Indiana, a team from Butler, a team from Purdue. So that's going to make added excitement to that. I'm thinking that the fan show out should be spectacular for that. I mean, if I'm a fan, I'm like, hell yes, I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, they had it here last year for the first time, and they had 5,000 or 6,000 every game at Freedom Hall, and I imagine they'll have more this year. That more people that know about it. And Montrezl Harrell's playing for Louisville, Russ Smith's playing for Louisville, Peyton Siva's playing for Louisville. Kentucky's going to have a team in Rupp Arena, so yeah, it's catching on for sure.
Did the Louisville TBT team draw more than the U of L did last year?
They did. Yes, they did.
I'm just kidding, mess around with that. But yeah, looking so much forward to that. Daggone it, there was something else I was going to mention. But Indiana, it's the Big Ten. I mentioned earlier, I have no idea what the Big Ten is going to look like next year. Who's going to be what? I mean, on paper, Indiana could be the favorite going in, but I don't know what Michigan really has. They also have a top 5 or so portal class right now. Tom Izzo, what's he got cooking? Illinois, usually Brad Underwood has done a good job of bouncing back each year. Ohio State ended the year with a flourish. I think Northwestern's going to drop.
UCLA. Don't forget about UCLA.
I keep forgetting about those 4 teams. I forget all about Mick Cronin coming into the league now. And they kind of need a bounce back year. He didn't have the greatest year last year.
No, but he's got a lot of players coming back. And I think he just got a top player flipped his commitment yesterday from USC to UCLA. So I think he's going to be good. And that'll be UCLA's never played in Assembly Hall, so that's going to be really fun to see the UCLA uniform show up in Assembly Hall for a game.
And the same when Indiana reverses course and heads to Los Angeles to play at Pauley Pavilion.
The Rose Bowl this year.
The Rose Bowl on top of that. I mean, it's some spectacular things that are going on. Overall, you hate to see the demise of the Pac-12, but it does give us some cool things with those two conglomerates coming together.
Yep, no question.
All right, buddy. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Thank you so much. Getting ready for the PGA next up at Valhalla in Louisville. Right. And we'll look forward to that. Hopefully do some shows down there. So we'll look forward to that. You got to have a great day. You and Ruby.
All right. Have a great weekend. Thanks for having me.
You betcha. We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry for our peeps down in Southern Indiana, down in Sellersburg. Go see our buddy, Dr. J. You keep up with that championship smile. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. All right. So we'll have about 9 minutes here to finish things up.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Oh, Big Al. Now, that one I don't think I would disagree with. LeBron is yeah, they definitely get, if they're not getting the BS calls, he's over there whining.
Yeah.
I mean, he is the biggest flopper in the history of flopping.
All right, here we go.
Weekend is your one-stop shop for high-quality meats, bakery items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Fresh Fork in Bloomington. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Thursday. Thank you so much for being with us. Brought to you by our friends over at Fresh Fork. Enjoy healthy, delicious meals at home without the hassle with the Fresh Fork. Chef-curated, ready-made meals delivered right to your doorstep. Proudly fueling IU athletes and now available to you with a menu that's always fresh and diverse, from hearty proteins to fresh salads. The Fresh Fork empowers you to make better food choices without compromising. Order online and let the Fresh Fork help transform your lifestyle for a healthier way of living at thefreshforkonline.com. Use promo code radio20 and you'll get $20 off your first order. I know that some of you have made that order. Thank you. And remember to support those who support us and allow us to help bring this content to you, whether it's the Chop Shop, Free Think Apparel, Autograph app, let's see, Hoosier Hanks East, The Ugly Grouper, Boost Fundraising, Bubba's 33, Reynolds Family Dentistry, Remax Realty with Cheryl Sizemore. Don't forget, all of them help us bring all of this content to you. Help us go to the places to bring you that as well. And so we're grateful for each and every one of them and hope that you will support them. Just some notes. Indianapolis Motor Speedway looking like it will be a sellout in the grandstand area as of this past Tuesday. 15,000 more tickets had been sold than at this time last year. That's a lot for a place that holds as much as they do. That's you wouldn't think that that's a huge number, but that's 90% increase over the same time last year. And there were 330,000 people there last year. May have been second only to the 100th running, but I will say this. Wow. Getting out of there is a biatch. It is it's slow going. I mean, they should have events after the 500 to keep some people in place, let some go away. They should have a couple of bands set up, I think, in different areas. What a great suggestion. What a great idea that is. Hello. Anything. You could do a lot of things. That's a hell of an idea. Boy, Jim, you're on it today. Just kidding. But I'm looking forward to going to the Indianapolis 500. It was a great finish last year again, but afterwards and it's because, ironically, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and Churchill Downs, similar in the fact that when they were built originally, they weren't surrounded by all that they're surrounded by now. And neither are surrounded by an interstate. That is evident when you go to leave. So there's that. More Indianapolis news. A Fort Wayne billionaire has bought a stake in the Indy 11 soccer team as the city is looking to build a new soccer-only stadium. And the ultimate goal is to attract an MLS team, Major League Soccer team. The rise of soccer in this area, Louisville and Indianapolis both. You have Louisville FC, who has been uber successful it's the same league. But Cincinnati was in that league, and which is one rung below the MLS, but they've elevated to MLS. They have an MLS team, and Indianapolis is probably next. Louisville has a new stadium, but I'm wondering if it's big enough for pro soccer. John,
yeah, I can answer that for you. So it's currently in its current state, it's not up to, I guess, the MLS standard. But when they did build the new stadium, they left it open on the end to where they could expand it to an MLS style capacity if they ever made that jump to Major League Soccer.
Yeah, I would think so, because it's where it's built. It's in a nice open area. You should be able to add parking and whatnot and things like that. But man, yeah, the rise of soccer is continuing here. But why would it not, especially in Indianapolis, as just one of the
not only that, but in less than, I guess, right at 2 years from this summer, the World Cup comes to the United States, which will be a huge deal.
Yes, it will be. And a lot of flopping. Expect a lot of flopping.
It's not what it used to be. I know that you love talking about the flopping in the World Cup, and I'm not saying there isn't, but I think over the last 4 to 8 years, the last 2 World Cups, the officiating has done a good job at kind of recognizing what is and isn't flopping and punishing teams that do so.
Well, as they should. It's just crazy. Can't stand that. But yeah, a Fort Wayne billionaire has bought a stake into the Indy 11, and I didn't realize there was a billionaire in Fort Wayne. But man, yeah, can you imagine being a billionaire? You just do whatever you want.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I'm a buy a stake in a soccer team today. It's crazy, but yeah, Michigan has named Therese Whitehead as their GM for NIL. What that actually means, I don't know, but I think that NIL has been separate from the schools. Indiana's Hoosiers for Good, their official NIL arm, has been headed by Tyler Harris. He's been on with us several times, but he used to work for Indiana in compliance, left to be the executive director of the NIL. So the good thing about that is if and when, I don't think it's if, but more when, Indiana brings that back in-house, I think you're just going to see Tyler Harris and Colin Hartman just sliding over, which would make that very, very easy. They're already in place. They're already familiar with, they're already doing it, and have previously worked there. I'm not saying this is impending, but obviously that's going to happen. Big thanks to everybody on the program today. Shannon Griffith, Bob Kravitz, Tyler Smith, Chris Denari, Rick Bozich. What an absolutely loaded lineup. Big thanks to John for anchoring the first half of that. And of course, each and every one of you. Without you, we could not we wouldn't have a reason to be here. We appreciate you immensely. So far, we're looking forward to tomorrow. John Boy, what do we have set up for tomorrow?
Right now, we should hear from Casey Bartley from Boiler Upload, Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, and we'll have to fill that void that is normally taken up by Bob Kravitz, as Kravitz is with us on Thursdays for the foreseeable future. So we may have a special guest on. We'll see what we can get worked up.
Or two. I've already got some ideas for that tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Go out and have yourselves a great rest of your day. It's been a rainy week, and that's okay. Into each life, a little rain must fall. You got spring showers bring May flowers, right? Well, we'll look forward to it. Thanks again. We're back tomorrow to do it again. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports